What up, though? Welcome to GANGSTAS Paradise. It's where I kick cautionary street tales. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that little bell. That way you can get notifications for whenever I drop a documentary. Keeping up with YouTube guidelines, I am not here to encourage folks to join gangs, cliques, mobs, or crews. But this is a fair warning if you choose to cross that line. Support GANGSTAS Paradise by going to Teespring and purchasing GP merchandise. I appreciate the support. Thank you all for joining me on GANGSTAS Paradise. Salute to my subscribers as I continue my quest to reach 10,000 subscribers. For those checking out GANGSTAS Paradise for the first time, subscribe to this channel. Click the like button and click that little bell. Checking out the comments section, and I got a couple of requests, and I will be making those videos from your requests very soon, and I appreciate y'all making those requests and interested in the GP spin on these docudramas. These are short docudramas and not autobiographies. Today I'm in Detroit, my hometown, the 313, the 3 and the 3rd, Detroit City, the Motor City, Motown, Motortown, Bad Boys for Life, 6 Mile, 7 Mile, and 8 Mile, East and the West Side, born and bred. For this one, I'm taking this one way back to the old school, taking it to the West Side. This is by request. I did a podcast on YBI, but GANGSTAS Paradise wasn't formulated yet. This is a startup channel, so make sure y'all click that subscribe button and the like button. Wonderful Wayne. People made the request to cover Mr. Wayne's story in particular. It took me a few months to get to this story, so here it is. Plus, I wanted to give the audience some West Side stories. That sounds like a title of a movie, West Side Stories. In my opinion, YBI is the most influential drug gang in the history of Detroit. That's just my opinion. Top 10s came storming through Detroit like a hurricane. This is before hip hop went mainstream. Run DMC's song My Adidas had nothing to do with the popularity of the brand. Adidas owes somebody a check. Former drug barons like Fat Cat and the Supreme Team were influential to rappers like Run DMC, who all are from Queens. No disrespect, but Fat Cat and the Supreme Team or anybody else in hip hop did not influence YBI. In fact, these guys started up in the 70s. So when these guys pull up, they may be bumping Funkadelic or Rick James or something. Detroit legend Jalen Rose said in an interview that joining YBI was tempting because the influence was all around him when he left his home. It would be a little different for me because the 2020 boys are the gang I would see during those days as a young one. But they do say 2020 was influenced by YBI. Some folks said in the comments section there was a West Side faction of 2020. I agree with many other people who were involved in the streets or analyzed street gangs that YBI organizational skills influenced other gangs to come after them. If you were not into the streets and young, you still wouldn't mind having a pair of top 10s. I couldn't afford top 10s. When my mom finally got me a pair, I got the quarter cut patent leather. This is intervention. I'd rather see this crew run a legitimate Fortune 500 club. I would rather see young folks make investments that grow over time instead of investing in things like top 10s that depreciate over time. The YBI brand could have been a good moniker or a title to a non-profit organization, which could have led to getting grants from the government. Back in those days, we were really young, and I must say the YBI story is what we wanted to hear over and over again. Though we don't visually see the gang, we definitely will hear about them on the east side. This public information so you all can go look at other content to hear different aspects of the gang. Kirk McGurk is out of prison and has done interviews, and other people involved with the gang have done interviews. We're talking about the 70s going into the 80s. I call it the 70s the era of the international hustlers, the 80s the kingpin era, and the 90s the money getter era. Still going to come up with a label for beyond the 90s, like the 2000s and so forth. Coming up on the east side, we definitely heard about YBI. The general consensus was that Butch Jones was running the show. We're young and not in the game at all, but the stories were interesting. I had a fam member who used to roll with YBI. He had one of those Corvettes they used to ride in. A fan of the show requested a Wonderful Wayne cover story. Because of that, I noticed that much of the east side look at Butch like he was the Don Mega. Some folks from that side wasn't necessarily fans of Butch, which is the reason the fan requested Wonderful Wayne. Some folks more or less say stop giving Butch all the accolades for YBI. With that being said, I'm not here to raise emotions, nor do I condone the YBI movement. I can't say young hustlers of today are influenced by YBI, at least up into the early 90s. But the YBI influence was up in the air, up in the atmosphere, and many kingpins and their cliques pretty much patterned themselves like YBI. And before I get into this, I got to shout out to the southwest side of Detroit. I am working on some material from the southwest, so stay tuned. Southwest has been supporting Gangsta's Paradise. Salute. Subscribe to this channel. Click that like button. Originally getting the name from addicts who called them young boys. And these guys were literally young boys. Young boys was the extremely well organized gangs. As Eastsiders, we wasn't necessarily trying to figure out the infrastructure. For one thing, we're young and then we way on the east side. Basically, we looked at Butch as the shot caller. And when the indictments came down, Seal was the supplier. If we listen to other documentaries out there, some of these folks know the movement. They know YBI. Very familiar with the YBI movement. And some of these guys used to serve YBI. At least that's what they say. This is public information, so you guys can go search YouTube. Check out my last docudramas as I went on the road to DC and Baltimore. And I am coming to you right now from the city of Detroit. When researching and looking at the comments, folks distinctively acknowledged there were different factions of YBI. This adds complexity to the group. Split up between Wonderful Wayne, Baby Ray, and Butch. At the top were four founders of YBI: Dwayne Wonderful Wayne Davis, Milton Butch Jones, Raymond Baby Ray Peoples, and Mark Block Marshall. Block Marshall had a beef with Baby Ray supposedly over a woman, and that beef made him defect from the group. In 1976, the group was formed by a small bunch of Detroit neighborhood friends, all in their late teens, at Bernie Elementary School's playground. Dwayne Davis, aka Wonderful Wayne, Bernard Boykins, aka Bone Man, and Charles Lindsay, aka Choicey Chuck, were the original founders at the time. One of the things about this group and many other groups is these slick nicknames. It's like you got to have this slick nickname to be a hustler in the game, and these guys got some slick nicknames. So in reality, Butch wasn't an original founder, and he didn't come up with the original concept of the gang. 2 years later, Butch Jones, aka Big Boy, was paroled from prison and joined the organization. With separate factions, this will cause a power struggle later on. Wonderful Wayne, boss of his own faction within the gang, a consummate hustler. Within Wayne's faction were separate sub-factions, jointly overseen by Davis and Jones, that dealt specifically with the cutting and marketing of the drugs. These master mixers cooked up enticingly potent brands of heroin and slapped their packaging slick and catchy names like Atomic Dog, Purple Haze, Hocus Pocus, Starlight, Whippersnapper, Rolls Royce, Hoochie Khan. Baby Ray, Block, and WW, who were all supplied by Italian-backed sources. Butch steered them away from relying on the mafia for their product and encouraged complete independence. This further solidified Wonderful Wayne balling status in the streets. Now, there is really not much press specifically about Wayne. His story is mostly associated with the general YBI movement. The way they set this group up was meant to be around for generations to come. Subscribe to Gangsta's Paradise. I'm on a mission to get to 10,000 subscribers. Click that like button. Salute to my subscribers. I appreciate y'all. Young Boys Incorporated, in my opinion, a very influential drug gang. They made drug dealing look cool with the top 10s, Max Julians, and derby hats. Butch was considered a sociopathic thug who self-proclaimed himself as the leader of the gang or bullied his way to the leadership. But like folks said in the comments section, Block, WW, and Baby Ray made YBI happen because Butch was still in jail. It seems when he got out of jail and joined the gang, things really got started to get crazy out of control. But they were already in motion by the time he got out. One associate of Dwayne Davis said that he started switching his demeanor and the way he dressed and started hanging around a different crowd. With a narcissist like Butch, the self-proclaimed leader of the gang, as he told Wayne's right-hand man, "Hey, why don't you stop and come get down with me because I am about to take over the city." At least that's what the man said in one of those documentaries. Butch expected WW and Raymond Peoples to fall in line and be under his rule. There was a power struggle between the other two factions of the gang and Butch, or Big Boy, or the Henry Ford of heroin. Wayne got creative and started an offshoot, H20 gang, or H2O gang, and expanded his network to Seattle and Boston and other places. In other videos, I spoke how the swag and the look changed during the decade and how it transformed from the 80s to the 90s. This is something coming out of the 70s. The 70s was the Superfly look, slacks and butterfly collars. YBI came and threw that away. Coming into the 80s was the pre-hip hop look, but it became the era of the cocaine kingpin. The street look was more Eric B. and Rakim-ish, Run DMC, tracksuits, gym shoes, and jeans. Then we come into the 90s, which in my opinion is more the influence of what's going on today. The black urban wear got very popular. Air Force Ones, Versace, Coogee, Cartiers, Rockports, Pelly, Gators and suits was still the thing though. And Wonderful Wayne was known to be a dapper dresser. He had swag. Wonderful Wayne, with his YBI organizational skills along with his offshoot, H20, had a profound effect on the Boston heroin market. Again, I am not here to encourage folks to join cliques, mobs, the mafia, or crews, though many groups emulated the YBI style of rolling. As I look at Wonderful Wayne's story, it gets deep. WW and his lieutenant James Pep Cooper tapped into the Boston scene. The inner turmoil was still brewing up between the faction as Butch was on a quest to become the undisputed king of the heroin market in Detroit. Drama on the west side. To east siders is flashy and laid back, but don't get it twisted, they get buck on the west. Salute to Southwest Detroit. I got stories coming from over there soon. In Boston, the H20 crew set up shop in the Columbia Point projects where Davis met Steve Seeley, and Seeley became his bodyguard and driver while Davis did business in Massachusetts.
This is Bobby Brown's cream-colored Bentley. You can see the bullet holes and the blood on the front seat. It happened early this morning in Boston's top Roxbury section. Bobby was standing next to his car outside this seedy bar. His sister's fiancé, Stephen Seeley, was sitting inside. When a gunman opened fire, Seeley was hit in the head and chest. He died a few hours later at Boston City Hospital.
Bobby Brown just happens at this point to be a witness. If it turns out to be something else, we'll find that out, we'll look into it.
The gunman unloaded his pistol into Seeley and then reached in the car and snatched a large gold medallion off Seeley's neck, and then the assassin fled into the night. Seeley became a drug baron in Boston as he was affiliated with the Bomb Boys, an offshoot of WW's H20 gang. This beef between Butch and WW sort of reminds me of the intense beef between Maserati and Big Ed. Matter of fact, go back and check out the Big Ed story. That's actually my #1 video on Gangsta's Paradise. Neither side is backing down, and it's like who get to who first. WW brought in henchmen, including Seeley, to Detroit to have this showdown with Butch. It's written that WW was riding around, not appearing to be worried about Butch, or at least acting as if he was scared of Big Boy. WW was gunned down on a northwest Detroit street corner, Columbus and Lawton, on the afternoon of September 28, 1982, just months after returning from Boston with the teenage Seeley and several dozen more out-of-state henchmen ready to square off with Big Boy for control of Motown's heroin industry. Following Davis's murder, Seeley and other members of H-20 returned to Boston, renamed the H-20 crew to the Bomb Boys, and picked up where Davis left off, the lieutenant that Davis sent to Boston. Followed the YBI blueprint and what he learned from his mentors, Dwayne Davis, Raymond Peoples, and Butch Jones in Detroit. He and his crew eventually took over the vast majority of that city's heroin trade, Boston. Pep came back to Detroit after Davis's death and took over what was left of YBI. They operated about another 6 years, taking the group to another level until crack cocaine quickly became the inner city's drug of choice over heroin. Later on, Baby Ray was killed as the power struggle continued for years to come. This is Gangsta's Paradise. I just wanted to focus particularly on Wonderful Wayne, co-founder of the Young Boys Incorporated and founder of the H-20 gang. Subscribe to this channel and share this docudrama. Check out this message from Butch Jones.
People like playing, they got these prisoners all over, and they still about locking people up. And a dude need to get their education and stay in school, because once you get your education, you can write your own check in life. You can be anybody you want to be. You know, drugs is not the only option for us. There's a lot of legit stuff that we can do. And you know, and if I could change one person's life, I felt like I was, you know, I being did something good, man, because so much talent you see in jail, man. People in jail, they can do everything in the world. I promise you, man, it's a lot of talent in here. If these guys were given another opportunity to be on the streets and do something positive, a lot of these guys will never come back to jail because they're going to do something good with their life, man. But it's just so hard on guys in prison because people, when we go to jail, people forget about us, man, because they think it's over.
At the end of the day, everybody loses. WW and Baby Ray are gone, and Butch doing 30 years in prison.